Alright folks, you've seen the memes, you've seen the chaos, you've even seen the hot takes from people who haven't been in a fight since, I don't know, dodgeball in the 4th grade. Today, we're going deep into the 100 unarmed men versus 1 silverback gorilla debate. But we're going to do it with science, biomechanics, and maybe a little combat strategy. We're going to talk about some of the biomechanics associated with this level of combat, set up some very clear assumptions, and then I'll give you my answer. Alright, let's start off with what I know best, and that's biomechanics. Alright, so in this clip, we're going to be looking at the gorilla doing the attacking. Okay, it's kind of a surprise attack. These guys are brothers, and I just wanted to show, this clip is just as good as any to show, since we have similar anatomy and since we have similar movement mechanics, how powerful they can be in something kind of like a hook like this. Alright, so as always, we're going to start from the bottom. And in some of my other videos, we've looked at the hook, but definitely not in the gorilla. Just for an educational purpose, silverback, I've seen this mixed up. Silverback just means the adult male gorilla, mature male gorilla in whatever species. This would be the eastern lowland gorilla, assuming we're talking about the biggest species of gorilla, okay? Learn something new every day. Didn't know that before this debate. But anyway, so we're going to start from the bottom. You can see he shifts his hips forward as he starts to kind of throw that right hook as surprise to his brother, right? So watch his brother's head here. You can see that kind of when the right hook lands, kind of that slap that he gives him, you can see that the energy kind of reverberate from his hand to his head. All right. So before that actually happens, you can see that he gets a pretty good separation of the hip and the shoulder. So we've talked about that before. Whenever you switch your hips like this and face your opponent and that arm is kind of lagging behind coming around, the separation of the hip and the shoulder allows some of these trunk muscles and the muscles of the anterior shoulder, like the pec major and the anterior delt, the muscles that are responsible for horizontal adduction, like that of a right hook, to take advantage of something called the stretch reflex. So the gorilla actually doing the punching right here. Also, look at the fangs. Okay, look at the and the bite PSI power is like 1,300 pounds. Okay, so that's just a whole nother thing. But when he brings his hips forward like this, before he makes contact with his brother's head, you can't really see his shoulder, but you know that he's kind of reaching around the other hand that's trying to block this. And you know that it's lagging behind because we see that it doesn't actually hit until right there. So this stretch reflex occurs in some of the muscles of the trunk, and again, the muscles of the anterior shoulder girdle, to help be very, very powerful. And just mind you, they're going from a complete standstill. His brother's kind of messing with him, and then all of a sudden, just bam. So this is something that I want you to make sure that you consider fully whenever you're considering essentially you and 99 other of your similarly aged and capable buddies are going against a gorilla of this size and this maturity. I mean, given what we just talked about, think about that for a second. Upper body, we're talking about immense pulling power. Think like brachiation level lat development, massive delts, and explosive triceps. The silverback's punch isn't just going to hurt you, it's going to kill you. And lower body, not just for walking or brachiating. So now you should be picturing a creature with the power of a strongman athlete, but with claws, fangs, and zero regard for your feelings. I even asked ChatGPT to make some distribution graphs based off of whatever strength metric it wanted to. So it gave me a distribution for upper body strength for men and gorillas, and then it gave me a graph based off an estimated 1 rep max squat for gorillas versus men. And then I had them compare the two. This is the difference between the strength of a man and a gorilla. I know most of you already knew that, but I just wanted to get you an actual visual. To make this even remotely fair or analyzable, we have to make some very clear assumptions. Here's what we're working with for the purposes of this video. The 100 men are not armed. They can never be armed. There's no rocks, there's no tools, no Chuck Norris, nothing. So this is hand-to-hand combat only. We're assuming that every participant is equally willing to fight to the death and is exerting 100% of what their physiology will allow given the time that it needs to be done. There's no environment bias, so there's just a flat, open, we'll call it a grassy area with no trees, no hills, nothing. But it is enclosed so that you can't run away. But again, we're assuming that everybody's fighting to the death willingly anyway. And then I'm kind of imagining this like an arena where we've got 100 men that enter the arena at the same time, and the only time that they get to plan is the time that it takes to approach the gorilla who's already ready. So there's very little time to plan, if any at all. All right, so now let's move to what you guys really want to know. Here's my take. The gorilla wins. Now, before you throw chairs at your screen, just hear me out. Most people get fixated on the number 100, but let's think about what's actually physically possible. How many people can actually attack one target at once, hand-to-hand range? Realistically, maybe 6, 10 if I'm being very generous. Physics and spacing don't let 100 men dogpile very effectively. So essentially you've got 6 to 10 men at once trying to attack the gorilla, and everybody else is just standing there like a Mortal Kombat guy, just bouncing back and forth. And if you did try to dogpile 100 men on the gorilla, here's what happens. The people at the bottom get crushed and pinned with the gorilla. They're just as stuck as the gorilla is, rendering them ineffective when it comes to attacking. So what you end up getting is this perpetual like 1v6 or 1v10 scenario. And I think the gorilla takes the cake because I think that he can take 1v10 perpetually until all 100 men are gone. So I'm gonna be fair. Let's talk about some of the best arguments against my position and some of what I think are the worst. Best argument, target the eyes. Blind the gorilla. Reduce his coordination and his spatial awareness. If you get multiple people clawing at the face and somebody happens to get an eye, you also open it up for internal damage. Not to mention the head trauma and disorientation. I still don't think it's a guaranteed win, but it's probably your best shot. Worst argument? Just swarming, bro. Swarming really only works in theory if there's really heavy structure to it. And remember, one of our assumptions is that you really don't have a lot of time to plan. Trying to get 100 men on the same page is just not gonna happen. It's just gonna kind of be this clown car of carnage. So there it is. I think the silverback gorilla wins. Not because humans are weak, but because numbers don't overcome biology, unless the strategy and execution are flawless, which they don't have time for. Let me know what you think in the comments. Give me your best game plans, your worst takes, or your Mortal Kombat character lineup. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.